everyone, welcome back to my channel. So the month of May is my birth month. My birthday is May 2nd. So in honor of my birthday, I wanted to talk about the 21 books that I want to read the year that I am 21, because I have just turned 21 and there are a lot of books that I want to read this year. So this might be a bit of a longer video, so get yourself a snack or a drink or something. And without further ado, let's get into the 21 books that I want to read while I'm 21. Starting off with some heavy hitters. These are some big books, these are some intimidating books, and the first of which is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. So this is a book that has been on my TBR for quite some time now. It is like 800 pages and apparently the saddest book that everyone has ever read. So I definitely want to make myself cry this year, apparently. I am looking forward to the writing of this book. Everyone talks about how beautifully written it is. So I am very excited about that aspect of it, but I do want to get this off of my TBR at some point soon. So I'm definitely going to be at least attempting to read this in the year that I'm 21. Next up is the biggest book that I own, and that is Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann. This is over 1,000 pages long, and it is basically just filled wall to wall in terms of the pages with text, and it is just following a housewife in Ohio and all of her thoughts and everything she thinks about, contemplates, worries about, wonders about, and it's just kind of a never-ending string of her thoughts that take place over 1,000 pages. So while it is a lot, it is a very big book, I think it'll be really interesting to kind of follow one character and everything that they're thinking about throughout a long period of time. So I am very excited about this one as well. Next up is a book that I have had for about a year, and I really want to read this one with my best friend, and that is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. So I read Normal People and absolutely loved it. We read that one together as a buddy read, and so we definitely want to get to buddy reading this one. We've been talking about it for quite a while, so I'm hoping that we can actually get to it this year. But I love the cover and I love Sally Rooney's writing style, so I'm sure that I will really enjoy this one, and I love a buddy read, so it'll be really fun. Okay, next up I have a couple of kind of classics, and the first one is Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. So I absolutely love The Yellow Wallpaper. It's one of my favorite short stories of all time, and I picked this one up about a year and a half ago, actually. I got it for Christmas, and it kind of just looks at a community that is entirely made of women and what that looks like. So it sounds super, super intriguing, and I love the way that Charlotte Perkins Gilman writes. She has just an amazing writing style, and she has such creative and interesting ideas. So very excited to read this one, and I've had it on my TBR for long enough. I really need to get to it. Another sort of classic is The Collector by, who is it by? John Fowles? I don't know. So this is basically about a guy who collects butterflies and photographs them, and eventually he abducts a young girl. And it sounds really intriguing. It sounds kind of like Silence of the Lambs a little bit. I don't know if Silence of the Lambs was somewhat based on this. I'd have to look into that, but I wanted to get this one just because it sounded similar to Silence of the Lambs. So I'm very excited about this one. Also, the cover is just absolutely magnificent. One of the prettiest covers I've ever seen. And I didn't even realize that it was kind of a vintage book, or it was a classic, until I purchased it and saw that it said Vintage Classics. So I hope that this isn't too difficult in terms of the writing style, because I know that I can sometimes struggle with classics, but I hope that I really enjoy this one, and I do really want to get to this one soon. The final sort of classic that I want to read is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. And I really enjoyed one of her stories, and this just sounds super interesting. It is about the treatment of sex and depression, and it was first published in 1899, so it is pretty old. But I got this cover, which is just such an interesting remake of the original cover. Kate Chopin is kind of an important figure in feminist history and writing, and I think I should probably give this a read soon because I've been excited about it for a while. So definitely want to get to this one this year. and I'm very excited about it. I guess this one is kind of a classic also. I don't know. Next, I want to read Shirley Jackson's The Bird's Nest. So if you know anything about my reading habits, you know that I'm obsessed with Shirley Jackson. She's my favorite author of all time, and I am trying to collect all of her books. So this was one that I actually acquired a year and a half ago. It was also that Christmas, and I still haven't read. So I wanted to get to this one first. Basically, this is about a person with dissociative identity disorder, and it sounded super interesting. But the thing with Shirley Jackson is that there will only be so many novels, right? She's passed away, so there aren't going to be more novels. So I'm not particularly in a rush to read all of her books, even though I have a lot of them that I haven't read. But I do want to kind of read at least one of her novels every year. So this is the one that I want to read the year that I'm 21. It sounds really interesting, and I love her writing style so much. Obviously, she's my favorite author. The only problem that I can see with it is that the font is extremely small, so I hope that it's not too difficult to read, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, this is the only reread on this list, and that is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. So this was a book that I put in my books that I kind of want to read in 2021 video. And I would like to read this one this year, but I have read this one before. I read it once in, I think, the end of 2019, and it's one of my favorite books of all time at this point. But I listened to it on audio before I purchased the actual physical book, and I feel like I actually missed a lot when I read it on audio. So I would really like to reread this and kind of carefully go through it and annotate it and think more critically and deeply about it, because it is a book that is so rich with metaphors and ideas and different things, because Sylvia Plath was a poet. So there is so much lyrical kind of language and literary kind of references in here that I really want to dive further into it. So that is the one reread on my list. Okay, this year I also really want to read a lot more translated lit. I read a lot of it in the year that I was 20, but I have a lot more that I want to get to. So the first of which is Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sokegawa. And I don't know a whole lot about this one, just that it is set in a restaurant and it sounds super interesting. So I love the cover. And I love a translated book, and I've heard great things about this, so I'm gonna read this one soon. And then I also have Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. Similar color scheme, actually, that works pretty perfectly. But this is about a woman who has worked in a convenience store for many years, and her family is constantly like, aren't you gonna do something with your life? Why are you still working in this convenience store? And she says, I'm really happy where I am. So it's kind of about ambition and do you really need to have all this money or fame or prestige or anything like that to be successful and to be happy? Which sounds like a very interesting concept that I'm super excited to read. And I've heard great things about this and mixed things about this. So I wonder how I'm going to feel about it. But this has been on my TBR for a while and I need to read it pretty soon. Next up, I have The Blue Fox by Sian. This is an Icelandic author, and basically the book takes place in an Icelandic winter, and it's about an elusive, enigmatic fox. So I am really looking forward to that. I got this originally because I've seen other people talk about this author, and he sounds really cool, and also I am just very interested in Icelandic culture, so I wanted to give some Icelandic literature a read. So I'm going to be reading this one this year as well. Next is The Hole by Hee Young Poon. I've heard a couple people talk about this, mainly Kat from Paperback Dreams. I don't know if she likes it or not. She hasn't read it yet, but it was the winner of the 2017 Shirley Jackson Award. So if that's not right up my alley, I don't know what is. So basically, this is a Korean translated horror novel, which I haven't read any translated horror novels before, so I am very excited about it, and the cover is absolutely stunning. So next up is another translated work, and it is Kim Ji-young, born 1982, by Cho Nam-ju. Basically, this just follows a woman who kind of has to deal with all of these terrible things about being a woman. And what I've heard that's really interesting about this one is that there are like little citations at the bottom of the pages, if you can see, which kind of go back to actual studies of things that have happened to women in Korea. So it's definitely a fiction book, but it kind of takes elements of reality and works them into the novel in a really interesting way. So very excited about this one. And then I have The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I don't know a lot about this one. I just know that a lot of people have talked about how weird it is, and I love a weird book. I love a translated book, so I had to pick this one up. Also, the cover is just, say it with me, it's stunning. Moving right along, we have Creature by Amina Kane. So I read Indelicacy this year and was absolutely blown away by her writing style. So I just wanted to pick up her other book, and this edition is just really gorgeous. I know absolutely nothing about this book, but you know sometimes you have these authors that you read one of their books and you're like, I will purchase and read anything this person reads. So that is how I feel about Amina Kane. So I'm very excited to read this one as well. Speaking of authors that you'll read anything they publish, I have Transcend Kingdom by Ya Jiasi. So I read Homegoing a few years ago and was just completely overwhelmed with how beautiful the writing is, how intricately woven the story was. So what I know about this one is basically that it kind of joins the ideas of faith and religion and the kind of struggle within a family to come to terms with science when they have a full belief in religion, and how those two things kind of intermix, which sounds right up my alley. I love that kind of discussion. And the cover, again, is stunning. I'm sure that I will really enjoy the writing because I love Ya Jiasi's writing style. Very excited about this one. Next, I have a book that I have had on my TBR for a while, but just recently got a physical copy of, and that is Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. All I know about this one is that it's about two twins who spontaneously combust when they get angry, and that just sounds like such a fun time. So very excited about this one. The cover is super interesting, and I've only really heard good things about this, so I'm gonna read it soon. I've also heard fantastic things about The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And this is basically a horror novel, kind of thriller-esque novel. I've been really interested in reading some more Native American literature recently, and I've heard great things about this. I've heard from a friend that it is very gory, so I am a bit concerned about that, but hopefully I can get through it unscathed or relatively unscathed. A little bit nervous. The final 3 books that I have on this list are nonfiction books that I would really like to read in terms of learning some new information this year. So the first of which is Girls and Sex by Peggy Orenstein. And basically this just talks about the relationship between young girls and learning about sex and having sex, and kind of about the disconnect between parents and young girls on how they talk to young women about sex. And it just sounds very interesting and something that I think I should be more informed about. So I've had this on my TBR for quite a while, and I definitely do want to read this year. Continuing on the trend of kind of like women's health related books, I want to read Choice Words, Writers on Abortion by Annie Finch. Well, it's collected by Annie Finch. It's by a bunch of other people. But basically this just kind of talks about abortion from a bunch of different kind of perspectives. And it includes essays, short stories, poems, just every kind of thing you can think of. And it just sounds like a very comprehensive sort of guide to the emotions behind that and how people feel about that. And it's just a topic that I am very intrigued by and feel that I should know more about. So yeah, I've had this for quite a while, and I also would really like to get to this the year I'm 21. And finally, to end this list, I have kind of a fun book, and that is Packing My Library by Alberto Manuel. So this is basically this author's experience packing up their home library as they're about to move. So I would really like to read this as I am packing my own library as well. So I think that will be a really fun read and very interesting to get someone else's perspective on packing up all of their books. So that concludes the 21 books that I want to read while I'm 21. I am sure that there'll be lots more books that I want to read the year I'm 21, obviously, but these are some that have either been on my TBR for a while or are intimidating or things that I really want to know about. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you read any of these, please let me know how you feel about them in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.